Tonight, I've invited Asia as my special guest host, and trust me, she's about to reveal something that could completely change the way you look at old American coins. We're talking about Kennedy half dollars that may look ordinary, but some examples in today's collector market are valued at six figures. From forgotten coin jars to old collections, one small detail could make all the difference. So stay with us, because Asia is going to walk us through these incredible coins, and by the end, you may be checking every Kennedy half dollar you own. All right, thanks for having me. I'll be looking at the date, mint mark, condition, surfaces, and overall collector appeal. Then I'll give you my honest opinion on whether each coin is actually valuable in today's market.
First up, the story behind this coin begins in an America that was going through major changes. 1974 was a memorable year, with the country dealing with economic uncertainty and a rapidly changing political and social atmosphere. Kennedy half dollars were still being produced as a tribute to President John F. Kennedy, whose image had appeared on the denomination since 1964. The coins were made for everyday commerce, but many were also saved by the public because of the Kennedy connection. On the front, you'll see the familiar portrait of John F. Kennedy facing left. Around him are the inscriptions, "Liberty, In God We Trust," and 1974. Look closely near the bottom of the design and you'll find the D Mint mark, identifying the Denver Mint as the facility that produced this coin. Flip it over, and the reverse features the presidential seal with an eagle surrounded by stars. You'll see United States of America, half dollar, and the Latin motto, E Pluribus Unum. Those tiny details are worth examining carefully because wear can affect how clearly the lettering and design remain visible. Now here's something many people assume incorrectly about a 1974 Kennedy half dollar. This coin is not one of the earlier silver Kennedy halves. The standard 1974 issue uses a copper-nickel clad composition with copper inside and a copper-nickel outer layer. It weighs approximately 11.34 grams, measures about 30.6 millimeters across, and is roughly 2.15 millimeters thick. Its edge is reeded, giving it those familiar grooves around the outside. The D Mint mark matters because it identifies Denver production, and the 1974 D issue was produced in large numbers for circulation. That means this is not automatically rare simply because it is old. What makes a particular example more interesting to collectors is its condition, preservation, originality, and demand. Attractive original examples become harder to find, especially when a coin has escaped years of heavy handling. And this is where condition becomes critical. A very fine example can still show noticeable wear, but collectors will look closely at Kennedy's portrait, the lettering, the eagle, the stars, the rims, and the overall surfaces. They also look for scratches, cleaning marks, discoloration, and damage. Original surfaces matter because cleaning can permanently change the appearance of a coin and hurt its desirability. Collectors continue searching for examples like this, and auction activity can help establish what buyers are willing to pay for comparable coins. Professional grading may also be worthwhile when a coin appears unusually well preserved, because authentication and an independent grade can make a major difference when serious collectors are evaluating it. Now comes the number that makes this 1974 D Kennedy half dollar worth a much closer look. From an original face value of only 50 cents, it can reach approximately $110,000 in today's collector market based on the value you've provided for this example. That is an enormous difference from its original denomination, and it explains why collectors pay such close attention to condition, surviving examples, originality, and demand. So if you ever come across a 1974 D Kennedy half dollar that looks unusually well preserved, slow down before putting it back into circulation. Do not spend this coin. Never clean it. Protect those original surfaces, handle it carefully by the edges, and consider professional grading if the coin appears especially strong. Because sometimes the coin that looks ordinary in your pocket is exactly the one that deserves a second look. And the next coin in our hunt may give you another reason to check your collection before you spend anything. Next up, sometimes the most interesting thing about a coin is what you don't see. Take a close look at a 1967 Kennedy half dollar. There's no mint mark beside Kennedy's portrait, and that missing letter is completely intentional. But this coin has another detail that makes it especially interesting. It belongs to the short era when Kennedy half dollars were still being made with 40% silver. This was 1967, just a few years after the nation had lost President John F. Kennedy, and the Kennedy half dollar had quickly become one of America's most recognizable coins. At the same time, rising silver prices were putting pressure on U.S. coinage. The mint reduced the silver content of the half dollar from the earlier 90% standard to 40%, creating the silver-clad Kennedy halves of the 1960s. And why is there no mint mark? From 1965 through 1967, the mint intentionally removed mint marks from Kennedy half dollars to discourage hoarding. So the absence of a mint mark is exactly what you should expect on a standard 1967 issue. PCGS records a production figure of 46,978 pieces. On the obverse, you have Gilroy Roberts' portrait of John F. Kennedy facing left. Around it are the inscriptions Liberty, In God We Trust, and 1967. Turn the coin over and Frank Gasparo's reverse shows the presidential seal with an eagle, stars, and the inscriptions United States of America, half dollar, and E pluribus unum. The specifications are worth remembering. This Kennedy half dollar contains 40% silver and 60% copper, weighs approximately 11.50 grams, measures about 30.61 millimeters in diameter, and is roughly 2.15 millimeters thick. Its edge is reeded. Now here's what collectors really want to know. A 1967 Kennedy half dollar is not automatically rare just because it is old. In circulated grades, examples are generally available. The real difference comes from preservation. Collectors inspect Kennedy's cheek and hair, the lettering, the eagle, stars, rims, surfaces, and overall amount of wear. A very fine example, like the one we're discussing, can attract attention when it remains original and problem-free. And cleaning is one of the biggest mistakes a collector can make. Scrubbing away the original surface can leave hairlines, unnatural brightness, and other signs that experienced buyers notice immediately. Original surfaces matter, and attractive examples become harder to find as more coins are damaged or improperly cleaned. Collectors continue searching for examples like this, and certain high-grade specimens have appeared in certified auction records. The strongest grades become dramatically more difficult to locate, while ordinary circulated pieces remain much more available. Now comes the number that makes this 1967 Kennedy half dollar worth a much closer look. From an original face value of only 50 cents, this coin can be valued at approximately $122,000 in today's collector market, based on the value provided for this example. Its age, silver content, condition, originality, historical importance, and collector demand all help explain why a particular specimen could receive serious attention. So before you toss an old Kennedy half dollar into a jar or spend it at the store, check the date. Look at the surfaces. Examine the edges. And if you find a 1967 example in very fine condition, slow down. Do not spend this coin. Never clean it. Original surfaces matter. Handle it carefully by the edges. Protect it from damage, and if it appears unusually well preserved, professional grading may be worthwhile. Because a coin with no mint mark can still have a story worth thousands of looks, and sometimes one overlooked half dollar is enough to make you check every old coin you own. Next coin number 3. One look at the color on this coin, and you might wonder whether something went wrong with it. But before you make that judgment, take a closer look. This is a 1969 Kennedy half dollar in very fine condition, showing green and brown shades across its surfaces. And sometimes the way an old coin has aged can make you stop and examine every detail. 1969 was a fascinating moment in American history. The country was experiencing major social and economic changes, while the Kennedy half-dollar continued carrying the portrait of President John F. Kennedy, whose image had become one of the most recognizable designs in American coinage. The coin was produced as a circulating 50-cent piece, but its connection to Kennedy and its silver content also made it something many Americans chose to save. This 1969 issue belongs to the 40% silver Kennedy half-dollar era. Its composition is 40% silver and 60% copper. The coin weighs approximately 11.50 grams, measures about 30.6 millimeters in diameter, and is roughly 2.15 millimeters thick. Its edge is reeded. On the obverse, Kennedy faces left. Around the portrait are the inscriptions, "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and 1969. Just below the portrait, the D Mint mark identifies the Denver Mint. That mint mark is important because it tells collectors where this particular standard issue was produced. Flip the coin over, and you'll find the presidential seal with the eagle and surrounding stars. The reverse carries the inscriptions United States of America, half-dollar, and E pluribus unum. These details give collectors several areas to examine when judging the coin's condition. Now pay attention to those green and brown shades. Color alone does not automatically make a coin rare or valuable, and collectors need to distinguish natural-looking original surfaces from damage or artificial treatment. With a very fine coin, the amount of wear is also important. Collectors inspect Kennedy's cheek and hair, the lettering, the rims, the eagle, the stars, and the overall surface before deciding how desirable an example may be. Many people unknowingly spend coins like this because they see only the 50-cent face value. But collectors continue searching for attractive examples from the silver-clad Kennedy era. Attractive original examples become harder to find, especially when coins have been cleaned, scratched, polished, or otherwise damaged over the years. Auction activity can provide useful evidence of what collectors have paid for comparable certified examples. Still, remember that a standard 1969 D. Kennedy half-dollar is not automatically a rare coin simply because of its date. The specific condition, originality, preservation, and collector demand are what make an individual example stand out. Here's where this old Kennedy half-dollar gets truly interesting. Although it originally carried a face value of just 50 cents, collectors today may value an example like this at approximately $130,000 based on the collector market value provided for this coin. Its age, condition, original surfaces, historical importance, silver content, and collector demand all play a role. So if you discover a 1969 D. Kennedy half-dollar with unusual green and brown shades, please don't rush to change its appearance. Do not spend this coin. Never clean it. Original surfaces matter. Keep it protected, handle it carefully by the edges, and consider professional grading if the coin appears particularly well preserved. That old half-dollar sitting quietly in a collection may deserve far more attention than its 50-cent face value suggests. And the next coin in this hunt could make you look even more carefully at what you already have. Next coin number 4. What if a coin you could once spend for 50 cents is now the kind of piece that makes a collector stop and inspect every detail? That is the question surrounding this 1973 D. Kennedy half-dollar. It looks familiar, but once you understand what collectors look for, an old half-dollar like this can become much more interesting. 1973 was a fascinating year in America. The country was dealing with economic uncertainty, changing prices, and major events that would shape the decade. Meanwhile, the Kennedy half-dollar continued honoring President John F. Kennedy, whose portrait had appeared on the denomination since 1964. These coins were minted for circulation, but many Americans saved them because of their historical connection. This 1973 D is a standard issue from the Denver Mint. The D Mint mark beneath Kennedy's portrait identifies where it was produced. Unlike the earlier silver Kennedy halves, the standard 1973 issue uses copper nickel-clad composition rather than silver. It weighs approximately 11.34 grams, measures about 30.6 millimeters in diameter, and is roughly 2.15 millimeters thick. The edge is reeded. Look closely at the obverse, and you'll see John F. Kennedy facing left. The inscriptions read Liberty, In God We Trust, and 1973. Every letter and high point can tell a collector something about how much circulation where the coin is experienced. Turn it over, and the reverse features the presidential seal, including the eagle and surrounding stars. Around the design are the inscriptions United States of America, $50, and E Pluribus Unum. The reverse can reveal plenty about preservation, especially around the eagle, stars, lettering, and rim. Now comes the part many casual owners overlook: condition. A very fine example has already experienced circulation, so collectors carefully examine Kennedy's portrait, the hair and cheek, the lettering, the rims, and the reverse details. They also look for scratches, dents, spots, discoloration, and signs of cleaning. Many people unknowingly spend coins like this because they see nothing more than an ordinary 50-cent piece. But collectors continue searching for well-preserved examples, and attractive original examples become harder to find as more coins are cleaned or damaged. Demand remains strong among collectors who appreciate Kennedy $50 and their place in American history. Auction activity can provide useful comparisons when determining what buyers have paid for similar certified coins. Still, a standard 1973D should never be considered valuable simply because of its date or mint mark. The individual coin's condition, originality, preservation, and collector demand are what matter. And now comes the number that makes this old $50 worth a much closer look. From an original face value of only 50 cents, it can reach approximately $150,000 in today's collector market, based on the value provided for this example. Collectors look closely at preservation, surviving examples, historical significance, originality, and demand. So if you happen to find a 1973D Kennedy $50 that matches this very fine condition, don't rush past it. Do not spend this coin. Never clean it. Original surfaces matter. Keep it protected, handle it carefully by the edges, and if the coin appears especially strong, professional grading may be worthwhile. Because sometimes the biggest mistake is assuming an old coin is ordinary before you actually take the time to inspect it. Keep checking those collections because the next discovery could be the one you never expected. Next coin number 5. Before you put another old $50 back into a jar, take a second look at the date. A 1964 D. Kennedy $50 is not just another coin from the 1960s. It comes from the very first year of the Kennedy $50 series. And when you see an example with green and brown shades across its surfaces, that unusual appearance can make you want to examine the coin even more carefully. 1964 was an extraordinary year in America. The country was still mourning President John F. Kennedy, and the United States Mint moved quickly to create a $50 honoring him. The Kennedy design was introduced in 1964, making this first-year issue an important piece of American coin history. This particular coin carries the D Mint mark, identifying the Denver Mint. It was produced as a standard circulating $50, and unlike the later clad issues, 1964 Kennedy $50 contained 90% silver and 10% copper. That silver composition is one of the biggest reasons collectors pay attention to this date. The coin weighs approximately 12.50 grams, measures about 30.6 millimeters in diameter, and is roughly 2.15 millimeters thick. Its edge is reeded. Those specifications are part of what collectors use when identifying and evaluating an authentic example. Now look at the obverse. Kennedy faces left in the famous portrait created by Gilroy Roberts. Around him are the inscriptions Liberty, In God We Trust, and 1964. Just below the portrait is the D Mint mark, telling you this coin came from Denver. Turn it over, and the reverse features the presidential seal, with the eagle surrounded by stars. The inscriptions read United States of America, $50, and E Pluribus Unum. Collectors study these areas carefully because wear shows up differently across the high points of the design. And then there are those green and brown shades. On an old silver coin, unusual coloration can be part of its surface appearance. But color by itself does not prove rarity or create a special variety. Collectors want to know whether the surfaces remain original and undisturbed. With a very fine example, they inspect Kennedy's cheek and hair, the lettering, rims, eagle, stars, and overall wear. They also look for scratches, polishing, harsh cleaning, or other damage. That matters because many people unknowingly spend coins like this without realizing they contain silver and belong to the first year of an iconic American series. Attractive original examples become harder to find, while collector demand remains strong for well-preserved early Kennedy halves. Auction activity can provide useful comparisons, especially for certified examples. Although a standard 1964D should never be treated as valuable simply because of its date or mint mark. Here's where this old Kennedy half dollar gets truly interesting. Although it originally carried a face value of just 50 cents, collectors today may value an example like this at approximately $160,000 based on the collector market value provided for this coin. Its age, silver composition, condition, original surfaces, historical importance, and collector demand all play a role. So if you discover a 1964 D. Kennedy half dollar with green and brown shades, slow down before doing anything to it. Do not spend this coin. Never clean it. Original surfaces matter. Handle it carefully by the edges. Protect it from scratches. And professional grading may be worthwhile if the coin appears especially well preserved. Check those old collections, inherited coin jars, and forgotten boxes. Sometimes the most important clue is sitting right there in the date. And this first-year Kennedy half dollar is exactly the kind of coin that deserves a much closer look.